In 1923, a loaf of bread in Germany cost 200 billion marks. By 1936, Germany had the strongest military in Europe. That's 13 years. How does a country go from wheelbarrows full of worthless paper to tanks rolling across borders in barely over a decade? Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, so we're heading back to Germany between the wars tonight. But hold on, get yourself comfortable first. I mean it. Fix your pillows, grab that blanket. This one's worth settling in for. It's November 1918, Munich. The sound of boots on cobblestones drags you into consciousness. You're on a thin mattress stuffed with whatever scraps of fabric your family could spare. The good bedding got sold months ago when the food prices started climbing. The walls are thin, paper thin. You can hear your neighbour's kid coughing through the plaster. Again, that cough that won't quit. Your back aches. The mattress barely cushions the wooden slats underneath. And you're cold. Always cold these days. The coal ration doesn't stretch far enough, so you sleep in your day clothes plus whatever else you can pile on top. Your stomach grumbles. It's been doing that a lot lately. Outside there's shouting. Not the usual kind, different, angrier. Thousands of voices moving like a wave through the city. Welcome to Germany after the Great War, and buddy, things are about to get way worse before they get better. Here's the thing about losing a war. It's not just about the soldiers coming home broken, it's about everything else that comes crashing down with it. And in November 1918, Germany wasn't just defeated, it was drowning. The war ended on the 11th, November 11th, 1918. You probably know that date from history class. What they don't always tell you is what happened next. The chaos, the absolute mess of it all. Kaiser Wilhelm, the guy who'd been running the show, just peaced out, abdicated. No heir, no plan, nothing. Just gone. Imagine the president just suddenly quitting and nobody knows who's in charge anymore. That level of, well, this is bad. So now there's this new government. They're calling it the Weimar Republic, named after the city where they wrote up the new constitution because Berlin was too dangerous. Yeah, the capital was too dangerous for the government. That should tell you something about how well things were going. And these poor people running the new government, they got handed the worst job in human history because the winners of the war, Britain, France, America, they wanted Germany to pay, and I mean really pay. June 1919, Treaty of Versailles, you've heard of it, maybe learned about it in school as this thing that happened. But living through it, that's different. That's watching your country get gutted. The treaty said Germany had to pay reparations, war damages. How much? Well, the final number worked out to about 132 billion gold marks. In today's money, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars for a country that just lost a war and had no economy left. Oh, and they took the industrial heartland, the part of Germany that actually made things, occupied it, so Germany had to pay this massive debt with basically no way to make money. Plus, and this is the part that really stung, they forced Germany to admit the whole war was their fault, war guilt clause, whether that was fair or not, making people sign a paper saying, yes, this catastrophe that killed millions was entirely our fault, doesn't usually make for a stable peace. The German military, dismantled. They could keep 100,000 soldiers. That's it, for a country that had mobilized millions. No air force, no submarines, no tanks, no heavy weapons. So picture this. You're a regular person in Germany. Your country just lost a war. Your government is brand new and nobody really trusts it. You have no industry, no military, and you owe more money than you can possibly imagine paying. What do? Well, if you're the Weimar government, you do what governments have been doing since money was invented. You print more of it. See, they needed to pay their debts, they needed to pay government workers, they needed to keep things running, but they had no tax base. The economy was destroyed. People were hostile to paying taxes to a government they blamed for surrendering. So they printed money, just ran the printing presses, day and night. More marks, always more marks. And at first, it kind of worked. Bills got paid. Government workers got their salaries. Things kept moving. But here's the thing about printing money. It's like a drug. Feels great at first, solves your immediate problems, but the bill comes due, and when it does, it's brutal. Inflation started slow, prices going up a bit, nothing crazy, you could handle it. Your wages went up too, so it evened out, mostly. But then it started accelerating, not slowly, exponentially, prices doubling, then doubling again, then again. By 1922, things were getting weird. You'd go to the store in the morning and bread cost 200 marks. You'd come back that afternoon, same bread cost 400 marks. Not because anything changed, just because the money was worth less every hour. Your wages couldn't keep up. Employers would pay workers twice a day, morning and afternoon, because if they paid once a day, the money would be worthless by evening. People would rush to spend their wages immediately, sprint to the stores, because in 2 hours your paycheck might buy half of what it did when you got it. You know those images of people carrying wheelbarrows full of money? That's real. That happened, not because they were rich. Because the money was so worthless you needed a wheelbarrow to carry enough to buy groceries. There's this famous story, probably true, of a woman who left her wheelbarrow full of money outside a shop for just a minute. She came back and someone had stolen the wheelbarrow. They dumped the money in the street because the wheelbarrow was worth more than the money in it. That's how bad it got. Kids would play with blocks made of stacks of bills, not toy money, real marks, bound together in bundles because they were worth less than actual wooden blocks. People wallpapered their homes with money. I'm serious. It was cheaper than wallpaper. You had all these bills lying around worth nothing. Might as well use them for something. The numbers got stupid. By late 1923, at the peak of the hyperinflation, a loaf of bread cost about 200 billion marks. A single egg? Over 80 billion marks. A newspaper? Hundreds of billions. The exchange rate hit 4.2 trillion marks to $1. Trillion. With a T. Try to wrap your head around that. You can't. Nobody could. The human brain isn't built to comprehend those numbers in a real, practical way. Your life savings, gone, evaporated. That money you'd been saving for your whole life, it couldn't buy a stamp. People who'd worked their entire lives, saved carefully, planned for retirement. They were wiped out overnight. Everything they had, everything they'd worked for, just gone. And it hit different groups in different ways. If you were rich and owned property or businesses, you did okay. Actually, some people got richer. They could buy up assets with borrowed money, then pay back the loans with worthless marks. But if you were middle class, if you had savings in a bank, if you lived on a pension, you were destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. That's where the real poison entered German society. The middle class got obliterated, and these were the people who'd believed in the system, who'd played by the rules, saved their money, worked hard, did everything right, and the system betrayed them, took everything they had. You can imagine the rage, the sense of betrayal. looking at your parents who saved every pfennig their whole lives and now it's all worthless. They're broke and they're too old to start over. So who do you blame? The government, the new government that signed the treaty, the Weimar Republic. People started calling them the November criminals, said they stabbed Germany in the back. This myth started spreading that Germany hadn't really lost the war on the battlefield, that it was the politicians who surrendered unnecessarily. Was that true? No. Germany was finished by November 1918. The military was collapsing, but truth doesn't matter when people are desperate and angry. They needed someone to blame, and into this chaos, all these different groups started emerging. Communists on one side, wanting revolution like Russia had. Nationalists on the other, wanting to restore Germany's glory. Monarchists wanting the Kaiser back. Fringe parties popping up everywhere. Munich in November 1918, where we started, had armed groups taking to the streets, different factions fighting for control. The Freikorps, these were demobilized soldiers, couldn't adjust to civilian life, so they formed these paramilitary groups, violent, brutal. In the streets you'd see political rallies that turned into fights, sometimes shootings. The government barely had control. It was like the whole country was coming apart at the seams. You're just trying to survive. Get food, keep warm, stay safe. Basic things that suddenly aren't guaranteed anymore. The stores are half empty, supply chains broken from the war. The little that's available you can't afford because prices change by the hour. You might wait in line for bread, and by the time you get to the front, the price has doubled and you don't have enough. People were bartering, going back to trading goods directly because money was meaningless. A dozen eggs for a shirt, a loaf of bread for a book. Whatever worked. Your job, if you still had one, was chaos. Employers struggling to figure out how to pay workers. How do you calculate wages when the currency loses half its value every day? Some factories would let workers take home part of their production. Instead of money, you got paid in whatever the factory made. Screws, fabric, coal, whatever. Then you'd trade it for what you actually needed. At night, you'd lie on that thin mattress, listening to your neighbour's kid cough, your own stomach cramping with hunger, and wonder how things could possibly get any worse. And here's the truly wild part. They did get worse. Before they got better, a lot worse. But there was this moment, this brief window, where someone finally stepped in and said, "Okay, enough." The Americans and British, watching Germany spiral into complete chaos, started to worry. A totally collapsed Germany wasn't good for anyone. Revolution was spreading. The whole continent was unstable. So they came up with a plan. The Dawes Plan, named after Charles Dawes, American banker. The idea was simple. Give Germany a massive loan, introduce a new currency based on gold, restructure the debt payments to something manageable. In 1924, they introduced the Rentenmark. One Rentenmark equaled 1 trillion of the old marks. Just like that, they cut 12 zeros off the currency, reset everything. And it worked, mostly. The hyperinflation stopped. Suddenly, prices stabilized. Money meant something again. You could plan, save, think beyond the next hour. For a few years, from 1924 to 1929, Germany actually recovered, sort of. The economy grew. People found work. Things felt almost normal, but the damage was done. That middle class that got wiped out, they didn't forget. The savings that disappeared. Can't bring those back. The trust in the system, shattered. And all those fringe political groups that popped up during the chaos, they didn't go away. They kept organising, growing, waiting. One group in particular, founded in 1920, called themselves the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Most people just called them by a shortened version of the name. They'd been small, barely relevant during the chaos years, but they'd been watching, learning, building, and they knew exactly which fears to prey on, which wounds to poke. They promised to restore Germany's pride, to punish the November criminals, to make Germany strong again, to protect regular Germans from communism, from inflation, from all the chaos, and a lot of people, remembering their worthless wheelbarrows of money, remembering the hunger and the fear and the rage, started listening. By 1929, they were gaining seats in the Reichstag, still not huge, but growing. And then, because the universe has a sense of humour, the Great Depression hit. The American money that had been propping up Germany's recovery, gone overnight. The loans got called in, the economy crashed again, unemployment exploded, all that fragile stability vanished. People who just started to feel secure were back in breadlines, back to desperation. And those fringe parties that had been growing, they exploded. In the 1930 elections, that National Socialist Party jumped from 12 seats in the Reichstag to 107. Second largest party in Germany. 2 years. That's all it took. You can draw a straight line from that worthless wheelbarrow of money in 1923 to what came next. From the betrayal and rage and desperation to the choices people made when they were scared. Not excusing anything, just showing you how a modern, educated, sophisticated country can come apart, how quickly normal can become nightmare. You're still lying there on that thin mattress. The year is 1930 now. The coughing from next door has gotten worse. Your own prospects don't look great. You're out of work. Again, the savings you rebuilt after the hyperinflation evaporating again. And there are all these rallies in the streets, thousands of people in brown shirts marching, shouting, making promises, offering simple solutions to complex problems, telling you it's not your fault, that they know who to blame, and part of you knows deep down that simple solutions to complex problems usually don't work, that movements built on rage and blame rarely end well. But another part of you is just so tired, so scared, so desperate for someone to fix this, to make it better, to make Germany strong enough that this never happens again. The future is waiting, dark, heavy, inevitable. But tonight you just pull your thin blanket tighter against the cold and try to sleep. Unlike your warm bed right now, with your full stomach and stable money and peaceful night, hold on to that. Remember how lucky you are that hyperinflation is just a history lesson, not your daily reality, because the people we're about to follow into the 1930s, they aren't that lucky, not even close. The year is 1930, and you're standing in a breadline that stretches around the block again. You've been here for 3 hours. Your feet hurt, your stomach is empty. The guy in front of you used to be an engineer. The woman behind you was a school teacher. Now you're all just people waiting for bread. This is what the Depression looks like up close. Not charts and graphs. Not statistics. Just this. Standing. Waiting. Hoping there's something left when you finally reach the front. The American money dried up in October 1929. You heard about the stock market crash on Wall Street. Seemed far away at first, America's problem, except it wasn't, because that American money had been holding everything together. The loans, the investments, the whole fragile recovery. It was all built on American cash. When that money vanished, Germany's economy collapsed like a house of cards. Companies went bankrupt overnight. Banks failed, factories closed, construction projects stopped mid-build, workers sent home with nothing. The unemployment numbers are staggering. In 1928, you had about 1.4 million people out of work. Bad, but manageable. By 1930, it hit 3 million. By 1932, over 6 million Germans unemployed, out of a workforce of maybe 20 million. That's nearly 1 in 3 workers with no job. But those are just numbers. Here's what it actually means. It means your neighbour who worked at the steel plant for 20 years got let go. He's got 4 kids, no savings left from the hyperinflation, now no income. What's he supposed to do? It means the shop on your corner closed. The owner couldn't pay rent. gone. Just empty windows and a locked door. It means young people graduating with no jobs to go to, no prospects, no future they can see. The desperation is everywhere. You can smell it, literally. People can't afford to heat their homes or wash their clothes properly. The streets are full of people who look defeated, hollow. Suicides went up, way up. When your savings are gone, your job is gone, your hope is gone. Some people just couldn't take it. And into this misery, the politicians kept squabbling. The Weimar government was a mess of coalition parties that hated each other. They couldn't agree on anything, couldn't pass laws, couldn't fix problems. You had chancellors changing like seasons. Franz von Papen, Kurt von Schleicher, musical chairs while the country burned. Meanwhile, the extremists on both sides were gaining ground, the communists on the left promising revolution and workers' paradise, the nationalists on the right promising order and strength and revenge. Street fights broke out constantly, communist groups clashing with nationalist groups, people getting beaten, sometimes killed. The police couldn't control it, maybe didn't want to. You're just trying to survive. That's the thing people forget about economic collapse. It's not dramatic, it's grinding, day after day of not having enough, of watching things get worse, of being scared and tired and hungry. You eat less, a lot less. Potatoes mostly, bread when you can get it. Meat becomes a memory. Your clothes are patched and repatched. You've worn the same shoes for 3 years and they're falling apart, but you can't afford new ones. In winter, you're freezing because you can't afford enough coal. You sleep in layers. Sometimes you can see your breath inside your apartment. Your kids are always sick, that cough that won't quit. And you're one of the lucky ones because at least you have an apartment. Lots of people don't. There are homeless encampments in the cities, whole communities of people living in shacks made from scrap. They call them wild settlements. Families, children, living in shelters made of cardboard and tin. Some nights you walk past these camps and think, that could be me. One missed rent payment, one bad break, that could be my family. The shame of it all, that's what nobody talks about. Not just being poor, but feeling like a failure, like you did something wrong, even though you didn't, even though the whole system failed, not you. Men especially felt this. They'd been raised to be providers, to work hard and take care of their families. Now they couldn't. They'd apply for job after job and get nothing. Come home empty-handed day after day. You'd see grown men crying in the street, not from physical pain, from helplessness, from watching their children go hungry and being unable to fix it, and the politicians, they weren't helping. They'd give speeches about economic policy and international agreements. Meanwhile, you're trying to figure out how to make one potato feed 4 people. The anger was building. You could feel it, this pressure that kept increasing with nowhere to go. And those rallies we mentioned, they were getting bigger, more intense. The Nationalist Party, the one in brown shirts, they were everywhere now. They'd march through your neighbourhood, thousands of them, chanting, singing, looking disciplined and strong and purposeful, like they actually had a plan. Their leader, the guy with the moustache, he was good at speeches, really good. He'd stand up there and just rage about the betrayal, about the Treaty of Versailles, about how Germany deserved better, about how it was all someone else's fault. And you know what? It felt good to hear, because you were angry too, at the government that couldn't fix anything, at the foreigners who kept demanding reparations while you starved, at whoever was responsible for this nightmare. He'd point at scapegoats, say they were the problem, get rid of them, everything gets better. Simple, clean, easy to understand. Was it true? Didn't matter. It felt true. And when you're desperate, feeling beats thinking. The 1930 election was wild. The Nationalist Party jumped from 12 seats to 107. Suddenly, they're the second biggest party in the Reichstag. 2 years earlier, nobody took them seriously. Now they're a major force. The communists also gained. The centre parties, the reasonable ones trying to hold things together, they lost ground. People didn't want reasonable anymore. They wanted solutions. They wanted strength. They wanted someone to blame. By 1932, things were worse, even worse than 1930. Unemployment still climbing, more businesses failing, more desperation. There were presidential elections. The old president, Hindenburg, he won, but the mustache guy came in second, got over 13 million votes, 13 million Germans saying, yes, this angry man yelling about revenge, let's try that. The July 1932 Reichstag elections. The Nationalist Party became the single largest party, 230 seats, not a majority, but the biggest bloc. Here's where it gets complicated. The conservative establishment, old military guys, business leaders, traditional politicians, they hated the Weimar Republic, thought it was weak, too democratic, too chaotic, but they also didn't fully trust the Nationalist Party. Too radical, too unpredictable, too lower class for their taste. So they had this idea, brilliant in its stupidity. They'd bring some nationalist leaders into the government, give them a few positions, but surround them with conservatives, control them, use their popularity, but contain their radicalism. They thought they were being clever, co-opting the movement, taming it. In January 1933, they convinced old President Hindenburg to appoint the mustache guy as Chancellor, not because they liked him, because they thought they could control him. He'd be Chancellor, but there were only 2 other party members in the cabinet. Everyone else was conservative establishment. They'd keep him in check. Obviously, I cannot stress enough how catastrophically wrong they were. January 30th, 1933, you're going about your day. Maybe you heard the news. New Chancellor appointed. Probably didn't think much about it. Chancellors had been changing constantly. This was just another one. But this time was different. You'd realise that soon enough. Within weeks, things started changing. Fast. Way too fast. February 27th, the Reichstag building burned. Big fire. Lots of smoke. They blamed a communist, said it was the start of a communist uprising. Was it really? Who knows? Convenient timing, though. Perfect excuse for what came next. The new Chancellor went to old Hindenburg. Said there's a communist threat. Emergency powers needed. Just temporary. Just to restore order. Hindenburg signed. Of course he did. He was 85 years old and scared of communists. The Reichstag fire decree, February 28, 1933, suspended most civil liberties, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, all gone. Temporarily, spoiler alert. Nothing about it was temporary. Communist Party members got arrested, thousands of them. Opposition newspapers shut down. Dissidents disappeared. Happened so fast people barely processed it. March 1933, another election. But this time, the Nationalist Party controlled the police, controlled who could hold rallies, controlled the message, and they had those emergency powers. They didn't win a majority. Even with all that, they only got 43.9% of the vote. But combined with their coalition partners, they had enough. March 23rd, 1933. The Enabling Act basically said the Chancellor could pass laws without the Reichstag, without any checks. He could just decree things into existence. The Reichstag voted to make itself irrelevant. Why? Some members were already arrested, others were threatened, many were true believers, some just went along because everyone else was. And just like that, democracy in Germany was over. Dead. 4 months from appointment to dictatorship. 4 months. You're watching this happen. Maybe you supported it. Maybe you were horrified. Maybe you were just confused. Either way, the world you knew was ending. The conservative establishment that thought they'd control him, they realised their mistake fast. Too late though, way too late. One by one, every other political party got banned or dissolved themselves. By July 1933, Germany was a one-party state. Trade unions dissolved, replaced with a party-controlled labour organisation. New laws passed daily. The civil service got purged. Anyone considered unreliable got fired. Unreliable meant Jewish or communist or just not enthusiastic enough. Books burned, actual bonfires of books in the streets, students throwing books into flames while crowds cheered. Any book that didn't fit the new ideology, gone. Universities purged professors, newspapers that didn't toe the line got shut down, artists who created degenerate art couldn't work. A secret police force formed. They called it the Gestapo. These guys could arrest anyone, any time, for any reason. No warrant needed, no trial required. Just gone. People started disappearing. Your neighbour who spoke out against the new government, arrested. Your co-worker who told a joke about the leadership, taken away. Sometimes they came back, often they didn't. Fear became normal. You learned to watch what you said, who you talked to, who might be listening. But here's the complicated part. For a lot of Germans, especially those who weren't targeted, things actually started improving. The government launched massive public works projects, building roads, constructing buildings, lots of jobs suddenly. If you were unemployed before, you might have work now. The unemployment numbers started dropping fast, from 6 million in 1932 to 2.5 million by 1934. Eventually, down to almost nothing by 1938. Wait, how? How did they drop unemployment so fast? Well, that's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean deeply messed up. First, they changed how they counted. Women who got married received loans to leave the workforce. Marriage loans, generous ones. But in exchange, you had to quit your job. Boom. Instant drop in labour force. Fewer people working means fewer people counted as unemployed, even though nothing actually changed except the math. Part-time workers got counted as full-time. Forced labourers got counted as employed. People in concentration camps got counted as employed. The numbers looked good because they made them look good, but there were also real jobs created, arms factories, building projects, infrastructure. The government spent money like crazy. Where'd the money come from? They weren't exactly rich. Remember, Germany was supposed to be paying reparations, deep in debt. How do you fund massive spending when you're broke? They invented this complicated system called MEFO bills, basically fake government bonds, that let them spend money that didn't exist. They could print these bills, spend them, and avoid inflation by keeping it hidden from the international markets. Clever. Also completely unsustainable, but that's a problem for future Germany. Present Germany was spending. If you were a regular German not being persecuted, not targeted, you might actually feel things improving. You have a job now, money coming in, the chaos is gone, order restored. Sure, you can't speak freely anymore, can't criticize the government, have to be careful what you say, but after years of desperation, stability feels good, even if it comes with strings attached. That's how it works. Fear and bread make people scared of the alternative while giving them just enough to feel hopeful. It's effective. You might not love everything about the new regime, might feel uncomfortable about some things, but you keep your head down. Go to work, feed your family, try not to think too hard about what's happening to your Jewish neighbours. That's how normal people get pulled into terrible things, not because they're monsters, because they're tired and scared and grateful to have food again, because speaking up seems dangerous and staying quiet seems safe. By late 1933, the transformation was complete. The Weimar Republic was gone. Democracy was gone. In its place, a dictatorship promising strength and order and national pride. And most Germans went along with it, some enthusiastically, some reluctantly, some just trying to survive. You're still in that thin bed, but the neighbour's kid isn't coughing anymore. That family left. You don't ask where they went. Better not to know. You have work again. The factory reopened. Making parts for something. You don't ask what. Better not to know that either. The future is coming, fast, dangerous, built on lies and theft and violence, but from inside the moment it feels like progress, like things are finally getting better. That's the scariest part, how normal it all felt while it was happening. Your warm bed, your peaceful night, your freedom to say what you think. Hold on to those. Remember how quickly normal can become nightmare when people get desperate enough to accept any solution, no matter the cost. The year is 1934, and you're sitting in a government office filling out paperwork for your new job. The man across the desk smiles at you. Congratulations, you're employed again. Welcome back to the workforce. What he doesn't tell you is that employed means a lot of different things now, and not all of them are what you'd call actual jobs. Let's talk about how Germany dropped unemployment from 6 million to almost nothing in just a few years, because the story they told and the reality underneath are two very different things. Those marriage loans we mentioned, here's how they actually worked. Young couples getting married could borrow up to 1,000 marks. That's serious money, about half a year's wages for an average worker. You could buy furniture, set up a household, get started in life. Sounds great, right? Here's the catch. The wife had to quit her job. Had to. No choice. Part of the deal. The idea was women belong in the home, raising children for the nation. Every child you had, they'd forgive a quarter of the loan. 4 kids, the whole debt disappeared. A lot of women took the deal. Understandable. Times were hard. That money was tempting, and the pressure to conform was intense. But here's what it really did. Removed hundreds of thousands of women from the workforce, not because they wanted to leave, because the system pushed them out. And then the government counted this as reducing unemployment. Women who wanted to work couldn't, but they weren't counted as unemployed anymore. They were married, at home, where they belonged. Your sister took one of these loans. She'd been working as a secretary, good at it, liked her job, but her fiancé said they should take the loan. Everyone else was doing it, and that money would really help, so she quit, got married. Now she's at home, pregnant already, trying to convince herself she's happy about it. Is she unemployed? Not according to the statistics. Problem solved. Then there's the voluntary labour service. The name itself is a lie, because there's nothing voluntary about it. You're unemployed. You go to get your welfare benefits. The guy at the office tells you congratulations, you've been selected for the labour service. It's volunteer work for 6 months. You're going to help build things, dig ditches, clear land, plant trees, all for the glory of the nation. Your pay, less than the welfare you were getting, sometimes way less, maybe 25 pfennigs a day plus food and shelter. That's nothing. That's insulting. The work, brutal. You're outside in all weather, digging with hand tools, moving earth, building roads. Your hands blister and bleed. Your back screams. 10, 12 hours a day. The shelter is barracks, crowded, cold in winter, hot in summer. The food is thin soup and black bread. You're always hungry, always tired. And if you complain, if you refuse, bye-bye welfare benefits, maybe worse. Maybe you end up somewhere you really don't want to be. But hey, you're employed now. The labour service counts as employment. Check that box. Numbers look good. Your cousin got assigned to labour service. He's 19. Strong kid. Thought it would be an adventure. Came back after 6 months looking 10 years older. Hands like leather. Cough that won't quit from working in the cold and damp. He doesn't talk about it much, says it was fine, says he's proud to serve, but you see something in his eyes that wasn't there before. Then there are the actual concentration camps. Yeah, they existed before the war. Started right away in 1933. First they were for political prisoners, communists, socialists, anyone who opposed the regime. By 1934, they had several camps operational: Dachau, Oranienburg, others. The prisoners had to work, hard labour, building the camps themselves, then working in quarries, factories, whatever the state needed. Were they employed? According to the government statistics, yep, full-time employment. How nice for them, really boosting those numbers. You don't see these people. They disappear one day. Maybe you hear rumours, maybe you don't ask questions. Probably safer that way. The regime was really good at making the numbers say whatever they wanted. Part-time work counted as full-time employment. Didn't matter if you were working 10 hours a week, you had a job, check. People doing odd jobs here and there, employed. Kids helping on family farms, employed. Anyone who did any work at all, boom, employed. The actual unemployment went down too. That's real. There were actual jobs being created, but nowhere near as many as the numbers suggested. Where were the real jobs? Mostly in rearmament, building weapons, ammunition, tanks, planes disguised as agricultural equipment or passenger vehicles. Arms factories ran multiple shifts. You could get work there, good pay even, if you didn't think too hard about what you were making or why. Construction projects everywhere. The Autobahn, the highway system, employed over 100,000 workers at its peak. That's real employment. Actual jobs with actual wages. But it's 1935 now, and you're working on an Autobahn project outside Munich. The work is hard. You're building roads by hand mostly. Some machines, but lots of manual labour. Your muscles ache constantly. The pay is decent though. Regular wages, you can feed your family. That matters more than anything. You hear speeches about how these highways will unite Germany. Let families tour their beautiful country. Pride and progress. What you don't hear as much is how they're designed for military transport, how the bridges are built extra strong for tanks, how the routes connect to potential frontiers. You suspect, everyone suspects, but you don't say anything. The paycheck is too important. Your crew boss is a guy who loves the regime, wears his party pin proudly, talks constantly about national rebirth, German strength, all that. You nod along. Agree when expected. Keep your real thoughts private. That's how you survive now. And then there's what happened to Jewish Germans. This is where the economic recovery gets really dark. Starting in 1933, Jewish people got pushed out of government jobs. Teachers, professors, civil servants, all dismissed, just gone. Doctors couldn't treat non-Jewish patients. Lawyers couldn't practice law in most courts. Businesses faced boycotts. The Nuremberg laws in 1935 made it official. Jewish people weren't full citizens anymore, couldn't marry non-Jewish Germans, couldn't employ non-Jewish Germans in their households, couldn't vote. Their businesses got taken, sometimes through forced sales way below value, sometimes just seized outright. Aryanization, they called it, transferring Jewish property to non-Jewish Germans. That corner store you used to go to, the one owned by the Goldstein family for 3 generations, new owner now. The Goldsteins are gone. You don't know where. Don't ask. Their business went to some party member for a fraction of what it was worth. He's running it now. Badly. But that doesn't matter. This happened thousands of times. Tens of thousands. Businesses, property, assets, all transferred, all stolen, really, though they called it legal. And non-Jewish Germans benefited. That's the uncomfortable truth. Those stolen businesses needed new owners. Those vacant positions needed filling. Those apartments needed new tenants. If you were willing to look the other way, if you didn't care about who got hurt, there were opportunities, lots of them. Maybe you got a better job because the Jewish guy who had it got fired. Maybe you bought a business cheap. Maybe you just stayed quiet while your neighbors disappeared and told yourself it wasn't your problem. The regime called this economic recovery. Lots of jobs opening up when you force a whole group of people out of the economy. You knew the Goldsteins, nice people. Their daughter was in your kid's class. Then one day they were just gone. The store had a new owner, a party member, guy who'd never run a business in his life. You felt bad about it. You did. But you also needed to buy bread. And the store was still there. And saying anything would just cause problems for you. So you bought your bread, kept your head down, tried not to think about where the Goldsteins went. That's how it worked. Little compromises, small betrayals, each one seems reasonable at the time, each one you can justify, and altogether they add up to something monstrous. The economy was growing though, that's measurable. Industrial production increased, construction boomed, and the GDP was climbing. But it was all funded by deficit spending, the MEFO bills we mentioned. The government was spending money it didn't have on a scale that was insane. Between 1933 and 1936, Germany spent maybe 30 billion marks. They only brought in about 20 billion in revenue. You don't need to be an economist to see the problem there. Where was the other 10 billion coming from? Borrowed, printed, faked through clever accounting, stolen from people who got pushed out. The whole system ran on the assumption that future conquests would pay for current spending, that Germany would invade other countries and just take their stuff to cover the debt. Not a sustainable economic plan, more like a pyramid scheme mixed with armed robbery. But in the moment, people could convince themselves it was working. By 1935, unemployment was down to around 2 million. Still significant, but way better than 6 million. Most people had work of some kind. Money was circulating, stores had goods. If you weren't being persecuted, life probably felt pretty normal. Better than normal. Better than it had been in years. You had a job. Your family had food. The chaos was over. Order restored. Germany felt strong again. Sure, you couldn't criticize the government. Sure, you had to watch what you said. Sure, some of your neighbors had disappeared, but things were better, weren't they? You lie in bed at night sometimes and think about the Goldsteins. Wonder where they are, if they're okay. Feel guilty that you didn't say anything, didn't do anything. But what could you have done? Really, speaking up would just get you in trouble too, wouldn't help them, would just hurt you and your family. That's what you tell yourself. That's what everyone tells themselves. And maybe it's even true. Maybe there was nothing you could have done. Or maybe that's just what you need to believe to sleep at night. The propaganda was everywhere. Radios in every public space broadcasting speeches, posters on every wall, films showing German strength and unity, rallies and marches constantly. Kids learned it in school. The new curriculum, German greatness, racial theories, military discipline. Your son comes home talking about blood and soil, about Germany's destiny. You recognize the words, the ideas. They make you uncomfortable, but he's so enthusiastic, so proud, and contradicting him feels dangerous. So you nod, say that's interesting, try to subtly guide him toward better values, but the pressure from outside is so much stronger than anything you can say at home. This is how societies change, not all at once, gradually, one compromise at a time, one silence at a time, one stolen business at a time. The forced labour camps were expanding, more people going in, fewer coming out. The rumours were getting darker. Torture, death, but just rumours. Nothing confirmed, nothing you could prove. better not to think about it. Focus on your own family, your own survival. That's what matters. That's all you can control. By late 1935, the regime had been in power for almost 3 years. The transformation was complete. The economy was humming along, on paper anyway. Numbers looked good. People had jobs. Germany felt strong. The military was growing again. That happened in March 1935. Mandatory conscription, building the armed forces back up, violating the Treaty of Versailles openly. The world complained but didn't actually do anything, so Germany kept pushing, kept growing, kept preparing for what? War. Obviously war. Anyone paying attention could see it, but people didn't want to see it, didn't want to believe it. The last war had been too horrible. It couldn't happen again. Besides, you had your own problems, your job, your family, getting through each day. The big picture was too big to deal with, too scary to think about. Your bed is more comfortable now than it was in 1932. You can afford better blankets. The heating works. Your stomach is full. By those measures, things are better. You try to focus on that, the concrete improvements in your daily life, not the people who disappeared, not the propaganda, not the weapons being built, not the storm that's obviously coming, just your warm bed, your full stomach, your job that lets you survive. That's enough. It has to be enough, because the alternative is thinking about where this is all heading, and that's too terrifying to contemplate. It's 1936, and you're working in a factory that makes agricultural tractors. At least that's what the signs say. That's what you tell people when they ask what you do. Agricultural equipment, helping German farmers feed the nation. Except the tractors you're building have armor plating and turret mounts and tracks designed for combat, not farming. Nobody calls them tanks. Not out loud, but everyone knows what they are. The deception started years earlier, right from the beginning. The Treaty of Versailles said Germany couldn't have tanks, couldn't have an air force, couldn't have heavy weapons, so Germany just called them something else. Those tanks, agricultural tractors. The light ones were Klein tractor, the medium ones were Gross tractor, see? Perfectly innocent. The bombers, passenger aircraft, mail planes, civilian transport. The Lufthansa airline was basically a training ground for military pilots. Flying mail routes, learning navigation, practicing formations, all totally civilian. Nothing military about it. Wink, wink. Your factory had been making actual tractors until 1934. Then new blueprints arrived, new specifications. The boss gathered everyone and gave a speech about serving the nation, building Germany's future. The future, apparently, needed a lot of heavily armoured farming equipment. You knew what was happening. Everyone did. But the paycheck was good. Better than good. The defence sector paid better than almost anything else. And what were you supposed to do? Quit on principle, then someone else would take your job and you'd be unemployed again. Better you than them, right? That's how they got everyone to go along. Not through force, through making it easier to comply than resist, through making it profitable to not ask questions. The aircraft factories were even more blatant. They'd build planes with civilian markings, test them, then strip out the passenger seats and add bomb racks. Surprise, it's a bomber now. The Junkers Ju 52 started as a passenger plane. Lufthansa flew them on regular routes, comfortable, reliable. Then the military version came along, same plane, different job, paratroop transport, bomber, whatever you needed. Messerschmitt was making sports planes and racing aircraft. Fast, agile little machines. For sport, obviously. Nothing military about planes designed for speed and manoeuvrability. By 1935, Germany had hundreds of these definitely not military aircraft. thousands of definitely not military pilots trained and ready. March 1935, the regime announced mandatory conscription, just came out and said it. We're rebuilding the military, 1 year service required for all young men. Direct violation of Versailles. Not even hiding it anymore, just did it. The world complained. Britain, France, Italy held meetings, expressed concern, wrote strongly worded letters. Then did nothing, absolutely nothing. Germany got away with it. The treaty was dead. Everyone knew it. The question was just how far Germany would push before someone actually stopped them. Turns out pretty far. The military grew fast. By the end of 1935, the army had about 800,000 men. 8 times the treaty limit, equipped with all those tractors and passenger planes. Your nephew got drafted. He's 20, healthy. Good kid. He went in nervous, came back from basic training different, harder, more confident, proud of his uniform. He talks about German strength, about reclaiming what was stolen, about destiny. The army taught him more than just how to shoot. You're happy he has purpose, worried about where that purpose might lead, but you keep the worry to yourself. The Autobahn project was in full swing by 1936. The regime made a huge deal about it. The People's Highway, modern Germany on the move, progress and prosperity. The propaganda showed families driving through scenic countryside, workers building the nation's future, engineering triumphs, bridges that seemed to float, roads carved through mountains. It looked amazing. It was amazing. The bridges were beautiful. The roads went through stunning landscapes. Germany really was building something impressive, but the beautiful bridges had a secondary purpose. They were overbuilt, way stronger than needed for cars, because they weren't really for cars. They were for tanks, heavy military vehicles, supply trucks. The whole system was designed for moving armies. The routes connected to borders, curved in ways that made sense for military deployment. The exits were spaced for setting up supply depots. You're working on a section outside Frankfurt. The engineering is incredible. You're building a bridge that'll last centuries. The boss is obsessive about quality. Everything has to be perfect. One day, someone asks why the bridge needs to hold so much weight. Cars don't weigh that much. The boss just looks at him, doesn't say anything, doesn't need to. The guy never asks again. The Autobahn created real jobs. That part wasn't fake. Over 100,000 people working on construction at the peak. Real wages, real work. The roads were actually being built. But there was a problem. A pretty big one. Who was going to use these highways? In 1936, most Germans couldn't afford a car. Cars were expensive. Luxury items. The average worker made maybe 150 marks a month. A basic car cost 1,500 marks. 10 months of wages. For most people, impossible. So you had this beautiful highway system being built for a population that couldn't afford vehicles to drive on it. The regime's solution, the Volkswagen, the people's car, an affordable vehicle that every German family could own. The marketing was brilliant. A car for the common man, sturdy, simple, cheap, only 990 marks. Finally, regular people could drive. They set up a payment plan. Workers could pay in installments, 5 marks a week, save up over time. Eventually, you'd get your car. Your factory offered the plan. The boss encouraged everyone to sign up, supporting the regime, investing in Germany's future. Plus, imagine having your own car. You signed up. So did almost everyone you knew. 5 marks a week wasn't much, and the idea of owning a car someday, that was worth it. They showed you pictures, sleek design, 4 people could fit comfortably. It would go 100 kilometers per hour. The car of the future, available to everyone. 340,000 Germans signed up for the payment plan, put in their 5 marks a week, month after month, year after year. The money added up. 110 million marks collected. That's serious money. Enough to build a factory, start production, deliver cars, except no cars ever came. Not one. Not a single person who paid into that program ever received their Volkswagen. Where did the money go? The war effort, weapons, ammunition, equipment. The whole thing was basically a scam from the start. The factory they built? It made military vehicles, jeeps, transport trucks, eventually using forced labour, but no people's cars. You kept paying your 5 marks a week, kept believing the car was coming eventually, just needed more time, more development, soon. The regime was good at this. Taking money, making promises, delivering nothing, but by the time you realised you'd been had, it was too late to do anything about it. The weapons production was massive, hidden and open at the same time. The big arms manufacturers, Krupp, Rheinmetall, others, were running overtime. They built new factories, expanded old ones, hired workers by the thousands. The production numbers were staggering. Rifles, machine guns, artillery, ammunition, tanks, planes, ships. Germany was becoming an arms factory. Your brother-in-law worked at a munitions plant. Long hours, dangerous work, but the pay was the best he'd ever made. He could support his whole family comfortably. He didn't talk much about what they made. You didn't ask. Better not to know the details. The thing is, Germany wasn't ready for war in 1936. Not really. The rearmament was happening fast, but it wasn't complete. The military was growing but still had gaps, equipment shortages, training issues. If Britain and France had pushed back hard, stopped it early, maybe things would have been different, but they didn't. They negotiated, compromised, gave Germany more room. Every time Germany would do something aggressive, break another rule, everyone would complain, hold meetings, write more letters, then accept the new reality and move on. It was like watching someone cross line after line and nobody ever actually stopped them, just kept saying, well, this far but no further, then moving that line when it got crossed. The Rhineland remilitarization in 1936, that was a big one. The Rhineland was supposed to stay demilitarized. Buffer zone. Part of Versailles. March 1936, German troops marched in, occupied their own territory, which they weren't supposed to militarize. France should have stopped it. Could have easily. The German forces were small, mostly symbolic. If France had pushed back, Germany would have retreated. But France didn't. Britain didn't want to fight over it. So Germany stayed. Another line crossed. Another bluff called? This is when people should have seen where things were heading. Clear as day. Germany was preparing for war, building weapons, training armies, breaking treaties, testing boundaries. But people didn't want to see it. The last war had been too horrible. Millions dead. Whole generation destroyed. It couldn't happen again. Wouldn't happen again. So they convinced themselves this was different. Germany just wanted respect. Wanted to be treated fairly. Wanted to defend itself. Reasonable things. And if you didn't push too hard on those thoughts, if you didn't follow them to their logical conclusion, you could almost believe it. You're lying in bed. 1937 now. You've been paying into that Volkswagen program for 2 years. Still no car, but they say production is ramping up. Soon. Just be patient. Your nephew is in the army. Your brother-in-law makes ammunition. Your cousin does forced labour building fortifications. Your sister quit her job for a marriage loan and now has 2 kids. You work on the Autobahn during the day. Beautiful highway to nowhere, basically. Barely any cars use it, but it's there, ready, waiting. For what? You know, everyone knows. But saying it out loud feels dangerous, like speaking it into existence. The propaganda is constant. Germany is strong again. Germany is respected. Germany will never be humiliated like that again. Germans will have space to live, territory, resources, what they deserve. The maps in school show Germany's historical territories, the lands that were taken, the places that should be German. Your kids come home talking about reclaiming what was lost. It's presented as justice, righting wrongs, not as conquest, not as war, just getting back what was stolen. The economy is still growing, the numbers look good, production is up, wages are up, employment is up. By the statistics, Germany is thriving. What the statistics don't show is the debt, the massive, unsustainable debt, the spending that only makes sense if you're planning to invade other countries and take their stuff. The whole economy is a ticking time bomb, built on borrowing and theft and deferred costs. It only works if the war works. If Germany wins fast and plunders enough to cover the bills, if the war goes badly, if it lasts too long, the whole thing collapses, worse than before, much worse. But nobody's thinking about that in 1937. The momentum is building. The machine is running. Germany feels powerful again. Feels unstoppable. Your factory just got new orders, more tractors, different designs, heavier armour, bigger guns. They're not even pretending anymore. The foreman tells you production needs to increase, longer shifts, more overtime. The nation needs you. Are you with us or against us? You're with them. Of course you are. What choice do you have? The money keeps coming in. The propaganda keeps playing, the military keeps growing, the borders keep getting tested, and nobody stops it. Nobody even really tries. You pull your blanket up, the good blanket you could afford now. The apartment is warm, the heat works, your stomach is full. You have savings again, real savings in stable currency. By every measure you used to judge your life, things are better, so much better than 1932. Than 1923, than any of those nightmare years. You just try not to think about the cost, or what's coming next, or how all of this ends, because deep down you know how it ends. You just don't want to admit it yet. March 1938, and you're listening to the radio in your apartment. The announcer's voice is triumphant. German troops have entered Austria. No fighting, no resistance. Austria has welcomed them with open arms. The German-speaking peoples are united at last. Your wife is excited. Her parents were from Austria originally. She's happy about the reunification, feels natural to her. You're happy too. Mostly. It's hard not to get caught up in the excitement, the crowds cheering in Vienna, the flowers thrown at soldiers, Germany growing stronger without firing a shot. But there's this small voice in the back of your head, quiet, easy to ignore, asking where this stops, how far this goes. You ignore that voice. Everyone else is celebrating. Why shouldn't you? The Anschluss. That's what they called it, the union with Austria. It had been forbidden by Versailles. Austria was supposed to stay separate, independent. Germany just did it anyway, sent troops across the border. The Austrian government folded immediately. Most Austrians seemed thrilled about it, honestly. Vienna went wild, massive crowds, salutes, singing, people crying with joy, like they'd been waiting for this their whole lives. And again, Britain and France complained, held meetings, expressed concern, did nothing. The pattern was clear now. Germany would take something, everyone would protest, then accept it, move on. Germany would take something else. Where was the line? When would someone actually say no and mean it? Austria brought resources, people, industry. The economy absorbed it pretty easily. More workers, more factories, more materials. Your nephew got stationed in Austria. He wrote letters about how beautiful it was, how happy the people seemed, how proud he was to be part of this historic moment. You wrote back, said you were proud of him. You were, and worried, but mostly proud. The military kept growing. By 1938, Germany had over 1 million men under arms, modern equipment, good training, the best the country could produce. Your factory switched production entirely. No more pretending about tractors, just tanks, out in the open now. Nobody cared about hiding it anymore. The work was constant, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, sometimes 7. The pressure to produce more was intense. The nation needs you. The future depends on you. Are you doing enough? You're exhausted all the time, but the pay is incredible. You're making more money than you ever thought possible. Your family eats well, dresses well, has things you never could have afforded before. Your daughter wants a new dress for school, you can buy it. Just like that. No scraping together pfennigs, no choosing between bread and shoes. You just buy the dress. That feels good, really good. After years of poverty, being able to provide feels like success. Fall 1938. The Czechoslovakia crisis. The Sudetenland. This was the big one, the moment everyone thought might finally trigger something. Czechoslovakia had a chunk of territory along its border with Germany. The Sudetenland. Lots of German speakers lived there. The regime decided these Germans needed to be rescued, brought home to the fatherland. Never mind that Czechoslovakia was a sovereign country. Never mind that the Sudetenland had been Czech territory for decades. Germany wanted it. Therefore, Germany should have it. The demands were clear. Give us the Sudetenland, or we'll take it. And we're not bluffing this time. Czechoslovakia said no. They had a real military, fortifications, alliances with France and Britain. They could fight if needed. This was it, the moment. Britain and France had treaty obligations. If Germany attacked Czechoslovakia, they'd have to respond. Real war, actual fighting. You remember those weeks, the tension, the newsreels showing troops mobilizing, maps with arrows pointing at targets, your stomach tight with fear. This was when the reality hit you. War was coming, actually coming, not someday, not theoretical, soon, real, inevitable. You thought about your nephew in uniform, your son who'd be draft age in a couple years, your brother-in-law making ammunition, all of it suddenly very real and very scary. Then came Munich, September 1938. The leaders met, Britain's Chamberlain, France's Daladier, Germany's representative, Mussolini from Italy. Czechoslovakia wasn't invited to decide its own fate. They just had to wait while other countries decided what to do with their territory. The result? Germany got the Sudetenland. No war, peace in our time. Chamberlain came back waving a paper. Everyone celebrated. Crisis averted. Czechoslovakia got betrayed, lost 1/3 of its territory, its fortifications, its defensible borders. Its allies abandoned it completely. You felt relief. No war. Your nephew would be safe. Your family would be safe. The nightmare was avoided. The newsreels showed Chamberlain as a hero, the man who preserved peace, who prevented another catastrophic war, smart, brave, wise. Looking back now, knowing what happened next, the whole thing seems insane. But in the moment, people were genuinely grateful, relieved. The alternative seemed so much worse. Your wife cried when she heard happy tears, no war, no death, everything would be okay. You wanted to believe it, tried to believe it, but that voice in your head was louder now, harder to ignore. If giving in worked, why would Germany stop? Why wouldn't they just keep pushing, keep taking, until someone finally said no for real? March 1939. Germany took the rest of Czechoslovakia, not just the Sudetenland, the whole thing, just rolled in and occupied it. No German speakers to rescue this time. No justification except, we want it and you can't stop us. Britain and France protested, strongly worded letters, angry speeches, no action. The pattern was complete. Germany could do whatever it wanted. There were no consequences, no line in the sand, just words. You're at work when you hear. The guys on your crew talk about it during break. Most of them shrug. Who cares about Czechoslovakia? Not our problem. Germany needs space, territory, resources. One guy points out this means war is definitely coming. Can't keep taking countries forever. Someone will fight eventually. The others tell him to shut up. Don't talk like that. Defeatist talk. Bad for morale. Could get reported. He shuts up. Everyone goes back to work. Building tanks. For the war everyone knows is coming, but nobody wants to acknowledge. The economy by 1939 was completely militarized. Consumer goods barely existed anymore. Everything went to the war machine. You wanted to buy a new coat. Good luck. The stores were empty. All the fabric went to uniforms. The factories made military equipment. Same with food. Rationing started creeping in. Not officially, not yet, but shortages, limited supplies, lines for basic things. The butter was running out, coffee became rare, meat was harder to find, the good stuff went to the military, civilians got what was left. Your wife complained about it, quietly, in the apartment with the windows closed, because complaining too loudly was dangerous. The debt was staggering. Germany had spent itself into a hole so deep there was no climbing out. The only solution was conquest. Take other countries' resources, their gold, their factories, their food. The MEFO bills were coming due. The whole fake credit system was collapsing. The economy needed war to survive. Without plunder, everything would crash. This is the part that doesn't get emphasized enough. Germany didn't just want war. Germany needed war. The entire economic structure depended on it. All those jobs, all that production, all that spending. It only worked if Germany won quickly and took enough to pay for it. You're working on a new tank model, heavier armor, bigger gun. The specifications are impressive. This thing could tear through most defenses. The foreman walks by, tells you good work. These tanks will help secure Germany's future, make sure the nation survives and thrives. You nod. Keep working. Try not to think about what securing Germany's future actually means, who these tanks will fight, who they'll kill. Your son is 15 now, talking about joining the military when he turns 18. He's excited, wants to serve, to be part of Germany's great destiny. You want to tell him no, to run, to hide, to avoid what's coming, but you can't. That would be betraying the nation, criminal even. So you smile, say you're proud, hope maybe the war will be over before he's old enough, even though you know it won't be. The propaganda reached fever pitch in 1939. Everything was about German strength, German destiny, the need for living space, the right to resources and territory. Maps showed Germany surrounded, squeezed, denied what it deserved. The narrative was clear. Germany had to expand or die. No middle ground. The youth programs had every kid. Your son marched in uniform, did drills, learned to shoot, sang songs about blood and soil and sacrifice. He came home different, harder, more certain, less willing to question anything. The training did that, made them believers. Your daughter was in the girls' organization, learning to be a proper German woman, to support German men, to raise German children, to serve the nation. She talked about how many children she wanted someday. 4 at least, for Germany, her duty. She was 12, already thinking about babies for the state? That's how deep the propaganda went. The last few months before war were strange. Everyone knew it was coming. The troops were massed, the weapons were ready, the plans were made. But daily life continued. You went to work, came home, ate dinner, listened to the radio, tried to pretend everything was normal. Your wife worried constantly about your nephew, about your son's future, about what would happen to all of you. You reassured her. Germany was strong now, not like last time. The military was modern, well-equipped, well-trained. It would be quick, easy victories, then peace. You weren't sure you believed it, but saying it out loud made it feel more true. August 1939. the final pieces falling into place. The pact with the Soviet Union shocked everyone. Germany and the Soviets agreeing not to fight each other, secretly dividing up Poland between them. That sealed it. Poland was next. Everyone knew the demands on Poland were impossible, designed to be rejected, to provide an excuse. The last week of August felt surreal. Summer weather, people on vacation, kids playing in the streets, life as normal while the army mobilized on the Polish border. September 1st, 1939. You wake up to the announcement. German forces have entered Poland. Some border incident, Polish aggression, Germany defending itself. The lies were transparent, but it didn't matter. The war had started. Your wife cried. Your son was excited. Your daughter looked scared. You felt numb. This is what everything had been building toward. 6 years of preparation, the economic transformation, the rearmament, the expansion, all of it leading to this moment. Britain and France finally did something. They declared war 2 days later, September 3rd, 1939. The threats were real this time. Germany was at war with major powers. The quick victories would need to keep coming. The plunder would need to cover the costs. The gamble would need to pay off. If it didn't, if the war went badly, if things lasted too long, the whole structure would collapse. The fake economy, the fake prosperity, the fake strength, all of it built on debt and theft and deferred payments. You're lying in your comfortable bed, full stomach, warm apartment. Good job. Your family is provided for. By every measure, life is better than it was 7 years ago. But you're at war now, real war, and your nephew is on the front lines, and your son will be in 3 years, and everything you built, everything Germany built, it all depends on winning. The bet had been placed, all in, everything on the table, either it works or it all comes crashing down worse than before. You pull the blanket tighter, try to sleep. Tomorrow you'll go to work, build more tanks, keep the machine running, play your part. What else can you do? The momentum is unstoppable now. The path is set. The future is coming whether you're ready or not. And deep down, in a place you don't like to examine too closely, you know how this story ends. How all stories built on lies and debt and violence eventually end. But not tonight. Tonight you're just tired, scared, hoping against hope that somehow it'll all work out, that the promises were true, that Germany really is strong enough now. That your nephew comes home safe, that your son never has to go, that the war ends quickly with German victory and then peace, real peace. Finally, you know better, but hope is all you have left, so you hold on to it. Close your eyes, try to rest. The storm is here and there's no shelter anywhere. September 1939, and you're looking at the numbers that don't add up. Your factory manager called a meeting, told everyone production needs to double. The war effort demands it. Germany's future depends on it. You raise your hand, ask a simple question. Where are the raw materials coming from? The steel, the rubber, the fuel? He doesn't have a good answer. Just says the leadership will figure it out. Have faith. Keep working. That's when you realize how precarious everything actually is. Here's the thing about Germany's economic miracle. It wasn't a miracle. It was a magic trick. And magic tricks only work as long as nobody looks too closely at how they're done. Look at the numbers from 1932 to 1939. Gross national product went from 60 billion marks to over 100 billion. Unemployment dropped from 6 million to basically zero. Industrial production soared. By every measure, massive growth. Incredible, except when you look at what was actually happening underneath. That 100 billion in GNP sounds impressive until you realise the government spent way more than that. The debt was astronomical, somewhere around 40 billion marks, maybe more. The accounting was deliberately murky. The MEFO bills were a house of cards. Germany had been spending money it didn't have for 6 years straight. The bills were coming due. The system was imploding. The only way to pay was conquest. Take Poland's resources, France's gold, everyone's everything, plunder on a scale that would cover the massive debt. If the war dragged on, if Germany didn't win quickly, the entire economy would collapse. Worse than 1923, worse than 1932, worse than anything. Your factory couldn't get enough raw materials. The stockpiles were running low. You needed metal from somewhere, fuel from somewhere, rubber from somewhere. The plan was to take it from conquered territories. Just take it. That's not an economic system. That's robbery with extra steps. Consumer goods had basically vanished. You couldn't buy a new pair of shoes, new furniture, new anything. Everything went to the military. The stores were empty, the shelves bare. Your wife would walk through shops finding nothing, come home frustrated, angry. You'd tell her to be patient. After the war, once Germany secures its future, then things will get better. But you weren't sure anymore. The pattern was becoming clear. The prosperity was fake, built on borrowing and stealing and promising that conquest would pay for everything. The employment numbers were a lie. We've covered this. Women pushed out. Forced labourers counted as employed. Prisoners counted as employed. Part-time counted as full-time. Real unemployment was way higher than official numbers, maybe double. But the statistics looked good, so the government could claim success. Your cousin who'd done forced labour still counted as employed, even though he was basically a slave making pennies a day. But hey, the numbers looked great. The agricultural sector was struggling. Food production wasn't keeping up with demand. The rationing that had been informal became official. You got coupons for bread, for meat, for butter, limited amounts. Had to make them stretch. The portions got smaller as the war went on. The military got fed properly. Civilians got what was left, which wasn't much. Your family was hungry more often. Not starving, not yet, but hungry. Your daughter complained about the food, got scolded for it. Be grateful, support the nation. The troops need it more than you do. She stopped complaining, learned to stay quiet when her stomach growled. The infrastructure projects were impressive. The Autobahn was real. The bridges were beautiful. The engineering was solid. But barely anyone used them. Car ownership had increased, but not nearly enough. The highways sat mostly empty, waiting for military convoys that would eventually use them. All that money, all that labour, all those jobs for roads that served no civilian purpose yet. Pure military investment disguised as public works. The Volkswagen scheme collected 110 million marks from 340,000 workers. Not one car delivered. The money went to weapons. The factory made military vehicles with slave labour. You'd paid in for 3 years. Still no car, still waiting, starting to realise you'd never get one, but you couldn't complain. Complaining was dangerous, defeatist, bad for morale, could get you arrested, so you kept quiet, kept paying your 5 marks a week, kept pretending you believed the car was coming. The regime had succeeded in one way. Germany did have the strongest military in Europe by 1939. That part was real. Over 1 million men in uniform, modern tanks, advanced aircraft, good training, solid equipment. If the goal was military power, mission accomplished. Germany was formidable, ready for war, capable of serious damage. But at what cost? What had been sacrificed to build that military? Democracy, gone. Civil liberties, gone. Freedom of speech, press, assembly, all gone. Opposition crushed, dissent punished, fear everywhere. An entire group of people persecuted and driven out, their businesses stolen, their property seized, their lives destroyed. Jewish Germans who'd been part of the country for generations, gone. Your old neighbours, the Goldsteins, you never found out what happened to them. Don't know if they escaped or ended up somewhere worse. Probably better not to know, but their absence haunts you, their empty shop, their vacant apartment, the hole where they used to be. That's part of the cost. The lives destroyed, the people erased, the humanity sacrificed on the altar of national power. The middle class that got wiped out in the hyperinflation never really recovered. Some got jobs again, some got by, but the savings were gone. The security gone, the trust gone, and what did they get in return? Propaganda, promises, the illusion of prosperity. A militarized economy that only worked if Germany kept conquering. The young people were different now. Your son, your daughter, their whole generation, raised on propaganda, taught to value strength over mercy, nation over individual, obedience over thought. Your son genuinely believed everything he'd been taught. Germany's destiny, the need for living space, the righteousness of the cause. You'd created that. Your generation, by staying quiet, by going along, by taking the jobs and the money and not asking too many questions. Now your kids believed the lies, and they'd fight for them, die for them, kill for them. That weight sits heavy on you. Late at night when you can't sleep, the knowledge that you were complicit, that your silence helped build this, could you have stopped it? Probably not. One person can't stop a tidal wave, but you could have tried, could have resisted, could have said no. Instead you said yes, took the paycheck, built the tanks, paid into the Volkswagen scheme, kept your head down and hoped for the best, just like millions of others, all making the same calculation. Safety over principle, survival over resistance, one small compromise at a time until you'd compromised everything. The economy that looked so strong was hollow at the core, like those beautiful Autobahn bridges that couldn't actually carry the tanks they were designed for. Impressive on the surface, flawed underneath. The growth was real but unsustainable. The employment was fake. The prosperity was borrowed. The strength was temporary. It all depended on winning, fast, completely, taking enough from conquered territories to cover the debts, to feed the people, to keep the machine running. If that didn't happen, if the war went badly, if countries fought back harder than expected, the whole thing would implode spectacularly. You lie in bed thinking about this, the weight of it, the inevitability. Germany in 1939 was stronger than Germany in 1932. That's true. But was it stronger than Germany in 1914? Questionable. The economy was more fragile, the debts were higher, the dependencies were greater. And the world was different. Other countries had learned from last time, had prepared, had weapons and alliances and determination. This war wouldn't be like the last one. The technology was better. The destruction would be worse. The stakes were higher. Your nephew sent a letter from Poland, said things were going well. Quick victories, easy conquests, Germany rolling through resistance. You wanted to believe it would stay that way, that the optimistic predictions were right, that Germany would win quickly and everything would be fine, but history suggested otherwise. Wars rarely go according to plan. Easy victories turn into long slogs, quick campaigns become years-long nightmares, and Germany didn't have the resources for a long war. The stockpiles would run out, the occupied territories would resist, the Allies would mobilize. The house of cards would fall, and when it did, the crash would be catastrophic. You think about 1918, the defeat, the chaos, the hyperinflation, the desperation, how bad things got. This would be worse, so much worse, because Germany had bet everything, burned every bridge, made every enemy. There would be no mercy this time. But that's future you's problem. Present, you just has to get through today. Go to work, build tanks, come home, feed the family, try to sleep. The transformation was complete. From defeated, broken nation to military power, from 6 million unemployed to full mobilization, from chaos to order, all in 7 years. Incredible, impossible, yet it happened. The cost was everything that made life worth living. Freedom, truth, humanity, peace, safety, all traded for power and uniforms and the illusion of strength. Was it worth it? That's the question you can't answer, because the bill hasn't come due yet. The consequences are still ahead. The reckoning is coming but hasn't arrived. In your comfortable bed with your full stomach and warm apartment, it's easy to think maybe it was worth it. Things are better than they were. Your family is provided for, you have work, have purpose. But the price tag is still being calculated. The interest is still accruing, and when the bill finally arrives, it'll be more than anyone can pay. The Germany that rose from the ashes of World War I didn't rise through strength or wisdom or economic genius. It rose through lies and debt and violence, through exploiting fear and anger and desperation. It rose by offering simple answers to complex problems, by blaming scapegoats, by promising strength through conquest, by convincing people that their suffering was someone else's fault, and people believed it, wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, because the alternative was accepting that sometimes things are just hard, that recovery is slow, that there are no shortcuts. You were one of those people wanting to believe, needing hope, taking the easy path even though you suspected where it led. Now here you are, September 1939. The path led to war, to death, to destruction, like it always does when nations choose power over peace, strength over wisdom, pride over humility. Your warm bed right now, your peaceful night, your freedom to think these thoughts without fear. Hold on to those. Remember them. Remember how quickly normal becomes nightmare, how fast prosperity turns to ash, how easy it is to trade everything important for the promise of security. Remember the choices your grandparents made, the compromises, the silence, the complicity, and choose differently. Choose better. Choose truth over comfort, principle over safety, humanity over nation, because the alternative is waking up one day to find you've built a nightmare, and by then it's too late to do anything but watch it burn. The story of Germany between the wars isn't a story of economic recovery. It's a story of a country selling its soul and calling it strength, trading its humanity for military power, choosing the easy lie over the hard truth, and paying for it with millions of lives. Yours, your nephews, your sons, everyone's. But tonight, you just pull the blanket up, close your eyes, try to rest while you still can. The dawn is coming, and with it, everything that was always inevitable, everything you tried not to see, everything you knew was there but hoped would somehow pass you by. Sleep now, in your safe, warm bed, in your peaceful, free world, where economic collapse is a history lesson, not your reality, where tyranny is something that happened to other people in other times. Sleep knowing you're lucky, knowing how fragile it all is, knowing how easily it could all fall apart. And tomorrow, when you wake, maybe remember, maybe learn, maybe choose better than they did. That's all history can offer, not answers, just warnings, just reminders of what happens when people choose fear over hope, power over peace, lies over truth. Let that settle into your mind as you drift off. The weight of it, the importance of it, the fragility of everything we take for granted. And sleep, just sleep. Let it all fade into dreams while you still have the luxury of peace.